This is the first video in a new series I'm going to be making that will set up a new home lab using infrastructure as a code. Now, the first server I need to set up is a management server. And on there, I'm going to install Ansible, so that way I can provision new configuration for my entire home lab. There will be a mix of Windows servers and Linux servers, but mostly Linux servers. And I'll be using many tools in this home lab. Now, after I create the first server, the management server, I will be using that along with GitHub to upload playbooks and provision some more servers. A couple servers I can think of off the top of my head are a couple Active Directory servers, an AWX server, and, well, let's just wing it as I go along. Now, Ansible is very powerful. It can be used to keep configuration up to date on a server, add new software, and many other things. In another video, I may dive deeper into Ansible and all what it can do, but I want to focus on the entire home lab. Now, I'm not an expert by any means. I will try to provision things as cleanly and as efficient as possible, keeping security in mind, but I'm not perfect. I could make mistakes on camera, and I hope not only do I, but also you learn from those mistakes. Now, I don't plan on talking the whole time, so let's get started.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a management server. I am in VMware Workstation at this point. I've created a VM that is named based on Omaha, Nebraska, so OM, and then NO is Nebraska Ops, MGMT for the management, and then 01V for virtual server. I'm using Ubuntu 20.10, so I'm going to go and power it on so I can install. And I'm going to power through this install real fast so you don't have to wait around. But one thing I do want to mention is the reason I'm not using some kind of infrastructure configuration at this point is I do not have all of the infrastructure ready to go. I decided at this point Ansible will be good enough. In the future, I will work with something like Terraform to set up the servers. I also decided to work on VMware Workstation to start, just kind of test out the code. And then I will move to something like vCenter and integrate with the cloud as well. So I'm going to go and go English here. Nothing too fancy. I am using an internal network. So it's going to give me an IP address of 192.168.234.132. That sounds fine. And I'm just going to power through most of these options here. Set up with LVM, entire disk. Everything by default looks fine. So let's go ahead and continue. I'm going to enter my name in here as Nebraska Ops. Enter the server name that I'm going to be using here. And then let's go ahead and give it a username that I can use to set everything up. And go ahead and give it a password. Let's go and turn on the SSH server, and at this point I will not be using SSH keys until I can set it up. And I'm going to do a very bare minimum install. That way I can get Ansible, install Ansible I should say, on the server and use Ansible to configure the server itself before I use Ansible to configure the other servers. I will skip through this install and meet you on the other side. So Ubuntu is finished installing. I'm going to go ahead and reboot the server now. So the server is fully booted and I logged in. I gave it an IPA to verify the IP address has not changed. We're at 192.168.234.132. And I'm going to go into my Visual Studio Code and talk about how I have a repo on GitHub. It's Ansible Infrastructure Demo, and I will actually show my repo right here. So if you want to get any of the code I'm going to upload, go under Nebraska Ops in an Ansible Infrastructure Demo at this URL right here. I have already paired it with Visual Studio Code, so I am ready to go. And this will be for Ansible only. I will start simple by making just a playbook, and then I will eventually expand into roles and other functionality later down the line. So I actually want to test that I can get into the server. So I'm going to open up a console, and if you're familiar with how this looks, this is actually my Git console, or I should say Git bash. And I did that by selecting a default shell, and Git bash is one of my options. If you don't know what Git bash is or don't have it installed, I would go into Google and type Git bash, read up on it, and download it. Now I'm going to go SSH Nebraska Ops at 192.168.234.132. And I'm going to go ahead and accept, type in my password, and you can see that I have successfully logged into the server. So now what I want to do is make sure that this server is up to date. I'm going to do a sudo apt update, go and press enter, authenticate. And you can see that we have some packages that we can install. So I'm going to do a sudo apt upgrade -y to accept the upgrade. And now let's go ahead and install Ansible. Do a sudo apt install -y for yes, and Ansible. Great, now Ansible is installed. We can go ahead and set up our first playbook for setting up the server. Now, since I'm the only user on this is my home lab, no one else's, I'm going to put everything under the Nebraska Ops. You can see my present working directory is -home-Nebraska Ops. I'm going to go ahead and clone the repository here. So if you remember the URL, I'm going to do a git clone and go ahead and paste in the URL. Press enter. Now if I list the directory, you'll see that I have an Ansible infrastructure demo. I'm going to go ahead and go in there, and the only file we should see in there is the readme, just like I have over here. Now I will do a git checkout, and then I'm going to do development, because I am working off the development branch at this point. As you can see down here, I've switched to development, and now I'm ready to write my first playbook. Let's go ahead and start a new inventory file. So I'm going to go ahead and use the YAML format, If you choose, you can use the INI format. It works the same way. So start with YAML. Let's do home lab. And then get the hosts under there. And we're actually going to put this under a different one called management servers. And then I'm going to do hosts. Under the host, I will do localhost. And then under a home lab, I'm going to add, instead of hosts, children. And under children, I will put the management servers. Now, specifying localhost in your inventory file is optional, because once you reference localhost, it will actually implicitly put one in there for you, which means it's just like putting this in there. But instead, I'm actually going to explicitly put it in here. And under localhost, I'm going to do a variable as the connection is local. And I'm actually going to rename this to inventory.yml, kind of breaking a little bit of the convention scheme there, but as you can see, it will go through, and I actually have prettier as the extension, so if you don't know what that is, you can go over here to extensions and then search prettier, if I can spell it, and it will do formatting for you. And one of the format options is YAML. As long as it has .yml in there, you can see that as soon as I save it, it will line everything up for me. And it will convert my tabs to spaces for me, since YAML requires spaces and not tabs. I think I'm ready to test it, so let's go ahead and save this again. Add it to my repository. And I will push it. And I think I lost my console, so let me try it again here. Nope, it is actually still there. If I go back to the first one, and I do a git pull. Do a list to make sure my inventory is there, and clear the screen. Now I'm ready to do a test. And let's go and give the Ansible command, and the hosts, we're going to do management servers, the inventory file, so -i, and we said inventory.yml, do a -in for module, and let's do a simple ping. Since this is the first time I am connecting, it's asking me to verify the signature. I'm going to say yes. And we do have a problem. So it does say permission denied. We do have to have some sort of, and I actually think I see my problem here. This right here needs to be host underscore variable. Let's go ahead and upload that. And then we will pull down another copy. And after I try that again, I am still receiving an error. And let's go ahead and try this here. I'm not an expert with Ansible, so normally I've done an INI, but I decided I want to try with a YAML file instead. So let's go ahead and remove host vars text. Sync it. And pull down a new copy. And now that's what I had to do. So I am used to the INI format where everything is pretty laid out using brackets and a different hosts variables area. YAML decides to put the groups. You specify hosts or children for what you're doing there. Give the different hosts, and then the variables aren't specified. They're just laid out just like that. Now if I did want to give a variable to all the hosts there, I would do variables just like that and then list out my variables. And actually, it would be just like that. Go ahead and get rid of that and save it there. And now we're ready to set up the software, or I should say set up our playbook. So if I go back and do a new file, first we want to set up the software, so I'll do management and actually packages.yaml. Go ahead and give it 3 dashes there with the hosts as our management servers. And then it's always good to give your playbook a name. So I'm going to say install packages on management servers. And we are going to do this on a certain user. I'm going to go ahead and use the root user and specify some tasks. So the first one we're going to do is ensure that Vim is up to date. And if we're going to use the apt module here, and we just have to say the name is Vim, and I do want to update the cache, or let's do state as latest, and then update cache as yes. And that way, if I have to use Vim on the management server for any reason, I just have to, it will be up to date. Let's go ahead and save the file here. And let's make sure everything's working before I start going through everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and add management packages playbook. And let's go ahead and sync it both ways. Now, all I have to do is change actually the whole command to Ansible playbook this time, and get rid of our selector there. Keep it as inventory for the YAML, and go and specify management packages.yaml. And what this is saying is I did forget to put a dash in, so I'm going to do a dash and select everything else, indent it, resync it. Sometimes it's pretty easy to miss the small things and mess up your whole playbook. Actually, that did not take. There we go. And now if I pull in a fresh copy, try it again, and we have a different error this time. And again, I do know the reason why is instead of remote user, we're going to do a become yes, and become method. We can go do sudo, and the user we want to become is root. And now we sync it up again. Again, I'm not going to cut out any of my errors. I think it's very valuable for people to see the errors I make as I'm learning this and the errors that you might make along the way so you know how to fix it. What errors you might see and how to encounter and how to get through them. So I do a git pull. Let's try that again. And you can see that it doesn't like how we're sudoing in. And this one is actually pretty easy to solve. I just forgot to do, you can do either dash dash ask dash become dash pass, or just go dash K, capital K. It is asking my password here. And now it's updating Vim. So we have our first package. I am not familiar with any other packages I'll need at this time, so we will leave this playbook alone and come back if we have to add any more packages. After that, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new YAML file called managementosconfig.yaml and copy a lot of this code here. And this will be the configuration file for any of the management servers, at least the Linux ones, that is. So all that's the same, and we can copy the rest of this and get our first task in there. First thing I'd like to do is make sure the time is up to date. So I'm going to issue the name as set time zone to Central Time. Oops. And I am going to use the Community Edition. Make sure I indent. Go to General and then Time Zone. And the name is America, Chicago. And I just want to see what it currently is set to. So you can see at this point it is UTC. I'm going to save this and we're going to add it. And let's go ahead and sync the changes here. Pull in it and change the package to OS config this time. Set the password. And it looks like I did make a mistake, and that's because I forgot to import using Ansible Galaxy the module, or the collection I should say. So what I'm doing is, actually I need to prefix this with sudo, I believe. Ansible-Galaxy collection install community general. It'll take a second here to download the collection. And since I do see this install into root, I do want to try without sudo, so that way it will install multiple places here. And as you can see, the previous ones went to root. This time it's going to Nebraska ops. And it should be done here. One more. There we go. Let's try the Playbook again. And this time it's running. And it doesn't like the time zone. So I do need to check to see if I spelled everything right. So let's go ahead and list the time zones. Copy and paste it in case I misspelled something. Looks like I did. I had a misspelling right there. And now if we sync it and pull down a new copy, rerun it, it has changed the time zone. Now just to make sure, I already know the answer, but if we should rerun this, would it change it again? And the answer should be no, since it's already changed. We should see green. And we see green. So now we can configure the rest of the operating system as we need it. Let's double check that it did take. And if I do my time date control again, you can see it's American Chicago. It is 6:45 in the morning, so that is all correct. It does say NTP service is active, but I would like to make sure that's in the playbook in case that doesn't ever happen. So I'm going to make sure that one of the other packages is ensure that NTP is installed. So I just have to do an apt, and the name is going to be NTP. Don't need to update the cache again since it is doing that up here. And actually, I'm going to move this to its own. That way, we don't have to update the cache on any of the other ones. NTP is up to date on this. And now, I'm going to make sure that NTP is started and enabled. and that's using the service module. And I just have to do name as NTP. The state is always going to be started, and enabled is yes. Save that. And now I just have to sync it. So I'm going to say added NTP support. And make sure that's a client and not the server. Push it up to my repository. And pull it down. Run the playbook. And actually we're not doing OS config this time. We're going back to packages. It is installing the NTP package and starting it. Now I'm going to try syncing it manually real quick. And you'll see that I skipped ahead for just a second because I tried to run a package I did not have installed, NTP update, and then I was checking with this command to make sure it is synced, and you'll see that sync did succeed, so there's no need to do any further configuration with that. So at this point, I do have a working management server. It does have Ansible installed and working, as you can see. I am able to download collections from Ansible Galaxy and do some configurations. So at this time, I'm going to stop on the management server. And the next videos, I will set up some domain controllers so that way we have authentication for future servers.